A wife accused of setting her husband on fire, then running him over with the family van. In court, she cried, she lied, convinced she was going home again.
I came to this court filled with hope. I stand before you, innocent.
But then, her own sons took the stand. They didn't just testify, they exposed years of secrets, manipulation, and what really happened that day.
If I questioned her about it, usually she would just break down in tears, and I would drop the questioning at that point.
She told Trevor to beat me up if I kept asking questions about it. At one point, she said, wouldn't it be better if he was dead?
She cries in court, but here's the twist. She once beat the conviction, only to be retried and sentenced to life all over again. Todd discovered Linda was having an affair with a coworker, Chris Williams, and demanded a divorce. The next day, Linda is seen pumping gasoline unusually into her vehicle's rear window, not the tank.
You saw Ms. Stermer then opening up that glass?
Yes.
And lifting it up?
Yes.
And then what did you see?
Her putting the hose into the car, not into the gas pump, into the gas tank, into the back window.
Back home, Linda says she smelled fuel on a towel while doing laundry. Hours later, the house erupts in flames. Todd is on fire and severely injured. He was still alive when first responders arrived, but died on the way to the hospital from severe burns and blunt force trauma. Experts conclude the fire was deliberately set. Burn patterns and gasoline on Todd's clothes point to arson. They assert Linda drenched Todd in fuel, ignited him, then struck him with the van. Linda claims she was doing laundry when fire broke out accidentally after oil lamps and furnace fuel leaks. She stated that she fled to get help, and the van struck Todd unintentionally while stuck in mud. Linda Stermer was convicted of first-degree murder in 2010 and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the story didn't end there. Linda appealed the conviction, and in 2020, a federal court granted her a new trial. This was because her original defense team failed to call a critical fire expert, someone who might have challenged the claim that the blaze was intentional. And on top of that, the prosecutor had used emotionally loaded language, repeatedly labeling Linda as dishonest in a way that crossed ethical lines. So after spending a decade behind bars, Linda was released and granted a full retrial, a second chance to fight for her freedom. In 2025, Linda Stermer stood in court again, but this time, the stakes were even higher. After 10 years behind bars, she was now free on bond, facing a brand new jury, a new legal team, and the chance to finally tell her side of the story again. But what unfolded inside that courtroom shocked even longtime court watchers. Her own son, the boy she raised, sat just feet away from her and testified against her. A mother on trial for her life, staring at the child who now believed she wasn't innocent. According to courtroom insiders, Linda never expected her own son, Trenton, to speak out. During the first trial, he hadn't testified, but now, years later, he took the stand, and what he said would change everything.
Did Linda tell you what happened when you talked after the fire?
Yeah, she gave a few different stories over the next 2 years.
Different stories? Do you recall how they were different?
What she did, where she went, changed.
How did they change?
At one point, she said that she went back downstairs and went outside the back door. And I feel like at a different point, she said that she went out the front door. But at any time that I would ask, she would get either hysterical or angry and would attack me at times.
So when you asked her about the differences in the story, is that when she attacked you?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
A few different occasions. She, driving once, she, I think, pulled over and started smacking me or something. And another occasion, she just flat out attacked me and gave me a bloody nose and pushed me into the bathroom. Another occasion, she told Trevor to beat me up if I kept asking questions about it.
So all of these times you've just described were related to you asking why her story was different?
And what happened and how it was that my father didn't make it out.
He claimed Linda had coached him, warned him, even told him to stay quiet if anything happened to his father. He recalled moments where Linda allegedly made comments suggesting she was overwhelmed and angry with Todd. And while some statements were stricken from the record, the jury heard enough to cast serious doubt on her version of events. He wasn't alone. Her older son, Trevor, also took the stand, and while he didn't directly accuse his mother, his words added emotional weight. He described the fear, the confusion, the guilt, and how Linda had tried to silence Trenton when he began asking questions.
If you accused her of saying something different, then she would get angry and almost violent with us, especially with my younger brother, Trenton.
Your younger brother, Trenton?
Yes.
What did you see?
Trenton would make very direct accusations at her, and she would either hit him herself, or I'll never forget, she had told me, Trevor, if you hear him making those accusations, I want you to silence him. You hit him, you do what it takes, you silence him, don't let him say those things. And that was very uncommon because I was bigger than my younger brother, and if we had fought in the past, I would be reprimanded for it. So it was generally, I was told to protect Trenton, and never would any of my parents told me to actually harm him intentionally.
And that's why it stuck out in your head?
Yeah, very clearly.
Trevor said she cried and begged him to stop asking about it. And then came the most heartbreaking part, Linda's reaction. As her son spoke, Linda broke down at the defense table, sobbing into her hands, visibly shaken. At times, she could barely look at them, but the damage was done. Court reporters described a split in the family, according to those close to the case. Some of the Stermer children stood by their mother, insisting she could never do such a thing. Others believed the truth had to come out, even if it meant turning against their own blood. Linda's daughters, Brittany and Ashley, believe their mother is innocent. The young women don't talk to their brothers anymore. That division made headlines.
So you believe in her innocence?
100%.
Why do you think your brothers hate your mom?
Hate's a strong word, but I think that they lost their dad, and I lost a family dynamic that day too, and it was very scary, but there's a lot of things that my brothers were younger, and they weren't adult enough to know right from wrong, and I am. And I have a voice, and they might say they didn't, but they told the truth under oath away from my mom. So I was old enough to know, and I had my dad, and I had another family that I was able to get away from the situation, but when they lived it every day, it's different. So I'm adult enough to know what really happened. And I would not lie if I thought there was any inkling of an ounce that all the lies that they're saying, like, I would not be here.
So can you rebuild your relationship with your brothers?
They will not allow it. They don't want it because they've been around manipulation and poison family for too long. So no, I wish, yes, and it was okay, but no.
It wasn't just a trial about fire, fuel, or a van. This was now about a fractured family and the emotional fallout of a case that refused to stay buried. Her defense brought in a fire expert, something her previous team had failed to do. They argued the blaze could have started from faulty equipment in the basement, or even from heating oil or laundry fumes. They also suggested the van incident was an accident, not an intentional act. But prosecutors pushed back hard. They presented burn pattern analysis, timelines, and digital reconstructions that showed Todd was likely doused with fuel. His injuries, they argued, told a different story. One of a man trying to flee something far more sinister. They brought forward a former friend who claimed Linda had once casually spoken about ways she could get rid of her husband, even describing how easy it would be to crash a car or start a fire. The friend said she thought Linda was joking, until years later, when the unthinkable happened.
And can you tell the jury then why you called the police?
I called the police because she called me hysterical and said that she had a gun and wanted me to give her one good reason not to shoot him.
Not to shoot him?
Not to shoot Todd. And I did my best to calm her down, but at the end of the conversation, I still wasn't comfortable that things had calmed down, and so I called the police.
Had she ever talked about shooting him before that?
She talked about various ways that she had thought about getting rid of him.
What did she say to you?
She talked about shooting him. She talked about running over him with her car, poisoning him.
Investigators had found traces of blood beneath the van. They showed digital reenactments of how the vehicle moved across the yard. The defense insisted it was an accident, that Linda was trying to drive through the snow to get help. But the jury now had more data, more context, and more doubt about her version of events. Jury deliberated just 7 hours before convicting Linda in April 2025 on 2 counts of murder. When the verdict was read, Linda Stermer lowered her head, then started to cry.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree felony murder.
Members of the jury, listen to your verdict as recorded. In regards to count 1, guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. Count 2, guilty of first-degree felony murder. Is this the verdict of the foreperson?
Yes, it is.
Is this the verdict of the jury?
Yes, it is.
Anything else then, counsel?
No, Your Honor.
Address now? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Linda stood silently, her hands trembling, as court officers approached to take her into custody. As the cuffs were fastened around her wrists, she broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she turned one last time toward the gallery, searching for someone. Maybe one of her children. Maybe anyone still on her side. There were no hugs, no final words. Her daughter just stood there in shock, with tears running down her face. And at that moment, she knew her life was done. In May 2025, she was sentenced to life in prison without parole, receiving credit for time previously served. Judge called the act more gruesome than most, unable to fathom Todd's suffering.
Murder is by its nature a monstrous deed, but the one you've committed is even more gruesome than most. You lit your husband on fire and burned him alive. When he made it out of the house and you had a chance to reconsider your actions, you instead doubled down and ran him over with your car. I cannot fathom the suffering he endured in his last moments of life. And I cannot fathom the damage you've inflicted on Todd's family, his mother, his siblings, now your grown children, his grown children. You lured them out of the house using one of your many labyrinths of lies. The sentence of the court is life without the possibility of parole. Credit is 3,367 days. Ms. Stermer, anything you wish to say?
Yes, Your Honor. I came to this court filled with hope. Hope that the questions which had been unanswered for so long would finally be answered. That this would finally be proven to all that the tragedy that took Todd from our lives was an accident and not a crime. Today, while I stand before you, innocent and wrongfully convicted, I am prepared for the battle ahead. My husband, my family, my daughters, friends, and legal team remain confident that this conviction will also be overturned.
Thank you.
This wasn't just a case about fire, or a failed marriage, or even courtroom strategy to lie. This was about a family shattered from the inside, and the unimaginable moment when a mother faces off against her own children in court. But now, the question is yours. Do you believe Linda Stermer's sons should have testified? Or did they do the right thing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're into real courtroom stories, watch the next video on your screen. I'll see you there.